Mental illness like anxiety and depression is on the rise in the West, and so is the cost of the pills we're taking to treat it. But what if there was a cheaper, greener alternative all around us? Matthew Hill investigates.
Every year in our region, doctors are giving out the equivalent of one prescription per patient for antidepressants. Modern life is stressing us out. Half of us already live in urban environments, and as this number rises, our mental health seems to be deteriorating. Currently, 1 in 3 GP consultations relate to mental illness, but there's growing evidence to support a theory that could stop doctors reaching for the pills and prescribing a dose of nature instead. So I'm investigating if these so-called green prescriptions could change the way we think about and treat mental illness in the West. And if they really work.
If you go back 4 years ago, they were trying me on every single thing that the doctors could think of prescribing, but nothing worked. I started coming here with the recovery house as a volunteer just to get me out and about, and I'm still coming. I don't exactly say I'm normal, but definitely I am getting back into society compared to where I was. Curtains drawn inside a darkened room.
JK battles with alcoholism and depression, but now volunteers at Feed Bristol. It's a well-being project run by the Avon Wildlife Trust that gives participants access to a more natural environment in the city. It also aims to build social confidence in isolated individuals while teaching food growing skills.
I'm not on any prescription drugs, with the agreement of my GP.
Apart from the green prescription?
Apart from what this does to your chemical balances in your brain, which is well known now. The evidence is emerging all the way through.
You're hardly in the middle of the wilderness here, though. You're right next to the M32.
Yes, but for me living in a rental room in the middle of the city, this is an amazing difference. You know, I might have a view of a window box and that's about it.
The idea that regular access to nature can improve both our physical and mental health is not a new one, but it seems that the NHS is lagging behind charities and community projects in putting it to use.
Because we are charitably funded, we can afford just to take people for free, and that's great. We're very happy to do that, but in the longer term we think this should be a meaningful part of the health service. What we really want to see is we want to get the National Health Service to recognise the natural health service and see the benefits that nature can provide.
There are some interesting ideas here, but you'd expect a conservation charity to be keen on promoting nature and looking for ways to fund and protect green spaces. What evidence is there that green prescriptions really work? And could they really save the NHS and therefore all of us money?
As soon as you go into nature, brain standards that have shown that the brain changes in the way it actually operates. You get things called alpha waves which come through showing the brain is relaxed. Happens almost immediately you go into nature. You go back into an urban environment, those alpha waves disappear. In other words, the brain's not happy.
How have you seen this working for patients with depression?
Biggest problem we've got in society now is this chronic stress, and chronic stress really affects people who've got real problems of into poverty or in a bad environment, etc. And that chronic stress causes damage to the body in every part, including depression and anxiety. So the way we're trying to sort this out is you can either bring nature to people, so plant trees and make the environment much better, or you can get people out into nature.
In the next 20 years, a mental health crisis is predicted. Treating mental illness is already taking up roughly a quarter of the NHS's resources, but receiving around 11% of the budget, proportionately much less than high-profile diseases like cancer. But could green prescriptions be a cost-effective solution?
And what we have to do is to get a format that will allow the GP a very easy option to get that patient out into the green space. The evidence coming back so far on the social prescriptions and community prescriptions are that yes, it can start to save money, yes, it is acceptable to both the doctor and the patient, and yes, it is clinically good, and that's where we've really got to be.
It's really the first time I've explored it. I don't really feel I can go and talk to my managers. It's a fairly small workplace, and
Some have suggested that patients go to doctors expecting to be given pills to solve their problems and are therefore resistant to alternatives. But Dr. Jacobs, who refers patients into the Wiltshire Wellbeing Project, doesn't agree.
I think patients don't like the idea of taking medication. For patients that are on other medicines that they need to be on for other problems, you've also got not only the concern about side effects, but also the concern about interactions. And I think for some patients, having an alternative that doesn't have all those side effects and interactions is hugely useful. And there's not a single patient I've referred there who's been resistant to it. They've all felt it was a really good idea.
But even if patients are willing to join a green outreach scheme, places and funding are limited. Faced with more cuts, the NHS is already struggling to cope with the burden of mental illness. So is it time to start taking alternatives to the current system seriously?
We can only commission a small amount of services like that. I think other things we have to do is make green space just generally accessible to more people, improve the quality of green space, encourage people to use it more, especially people who live in areas where people aren't so traditionally likely to get out and about.
Would you like to spend more on green prescriptions?
Well, I'd like to be able to spend more money on all those things that can help people improve their mental health, and green prescriptions is one element of that.
It could be years before alternatives like Feed Bristol and the Wellbeing Project become part of the regular NHS treatments for mental health. In the meantime, what everyone I spoke to agrees on is that if individuals can start taking responsibility for getting active and out in green space, we could be safeguarding our minds and saving money.
I would recommend to anybody, don't stop taking whatever's being prescribed, but try it as an additional thing. It's part of the whole person approach, holistic, whatever you want to call it, so that you give it a try. You give it a try.